Hello everyone, I just wanted to film a quick comparison between Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the book, but it's just a movie. And yes, I know there's several differences, and if I wanted to point out every single one, I could probably be talking for like 90 minutes on one. So I'm going to point out the ones that I noticed more so than others, and that stood out as being more of an issue. And obviously I know that they couldn't turn a 734-page book into such a short movie without having to cut out things. I get that. I always want more than Harry Potter, and I love both the book and the movie. I just wish that they included a few more things in the movie. So in the beginning of the book, there's the talk about finding the three Riddles dead, and then the gun of Frank was arrested even though he was released, and then he remained the gun of the as families switched and bought it. And Frank also had more of Voldemort's plans than shown in the movie. And then Molly had sent a letter with lots of stamps to the Dursleys for permission for Harry to go to the Quidditch World Cup with them and spend the rest of the holidays and vacation with them, which I thought was amusing. And then I love this part that just doesn't get included, is that Fred, George, Ron, and Mr. Weasley came to get Harry by Floo powder in the blocked fireplace, and that was quite a spectacle. And then Mr. Weasley unblocked it to get them through, and Fred had snuck a toffee to Dudley, because Dudley can't refuse any food, sweets, especially since his diet. And then Dudley's tongue was engorged, and then that caused chaos and trouble. And Mr. Weasley had the Dursleys say goodbye to Harry because they refused to. And he tried to fix it, like the whole tongue thing, but the Dursleys were afraid of him. And then Percy, Chudley, and Bill also went to the World Cup, and I really wish that Chudley and Bill were more in the movies. And that whole dynamic of everything. And the group wasn't late meeting Amos and Cedric Diggory. Mr. Weasley had explained the portkey on the lock to Harry, and Harry had grabbed it right away. I mean, more dramatics in the movie, I guess. And of course, there's more of the Quidditch tournament. And one of the things that they left out was that Fred and George made a bet in the match with Ludo Bagman. And it was like throughout the books, there was more issues with that, and basically Bagman had blown them off and had given them fool's gold and then refused to pay them, even though they had given everything they saved to him, and he wouldn't even give that back. And he got into a lot of trouble with other people as well. And let's see. Ron, Harry, and Hermione had went to go get water after the tents were set up, and they ran into some old friends from school. And one thing that doesn't seem to be made in the movies is that Percy's boss, Mr. Crouch, calls him Weatherby. And of course, Fred and George tease him about it, and Percy just, idolizes his boss. And he even ends up being the judge for the first and second tasks in the tournament. And he covers for his boss, and that's a whole spectacle on its own, too. And Harry meets Winky at the World Cup, and one thing that is, she is Bunny Crouch's house elf, and she says she's saving a seat for Bunny Crouch, but he never shows up at the tournament, in the World Cup. And lo and behold, later in the book, spoiler alert, there's actually an invisibility cloak, and Bunny Crouch Sr.'s son is there instead, and he's the one that steals Harry's wand. And the group sat in the announcers' box, along with the Malfoys, not like in the movies where Malfoy's teasing them about, the nosebleed seats and all that stuff. And the Weasleys actually had two tents. The Gryffindors had their own separate tent. And they were in bed when they heard the ruckus outside. And they didn't put this in the movie, but the camp manager and the family were floating in the air by the wizards having fun with them. And there was no famous lines, like in the movie, that I loved seeing from Mr. Weasley telling Fred and George that Ginny was in the responsibility now. For some reason, that line always gets me in the movie, and that was not in the book. And Bill and Punsy and Chun-Li, they all went to help the Ministry with the whole Death Eater situation. And obviously I took notes for the differences, so you can hear the page turning. Mr. Weasley had told them to go into the woods and stick together. And I thought it was adorable that Fred had grabbed Ginny's hand and said, "Come on." And once in the woods, Ron fell, and Draco was there and stated Hermione shouldn't be spotted because she was a mudblood. They couldn't find Henry's wand, and they saw Winky for a second, and all three were together when they saw the donut being made. And Amos Diggory caught Winky with a wand. They interrogated her, and there was that whole spectacle, kind of like in the movie. And the group returned to the tent, not back to the port key, and Hermione's mad at how Winky's being treated. And then they show how Harry spent time with the Weasleys after the cup. Like, they played Quidditch with Ron and his brothers. And that's when Ron got his dress robes, and they, from Mrs. Weasley, and Harry's were green, because she had bought them while they were at the cup. And then, the Quidditch from the cup. I'm doubting myself. There was an intruder in Mad-Eye Moody's yard, and Mr. Weasley had to go help him with that situation. And that's foreshadowing, which I wish some of that would have been in the movies. And then again, since Peeves was taken out of the movies, he was throwing water balloons at the students when they arrived. Peeves always brings such a, comedic relief to the story, and I wish that would have been included. And at the swimming feast, Ron was really hungry, and nearly headless Nick talked about Peeves causing trouble in the kitchen earlier, and he had mentioned how the house elves were in there, and how that's how they always eat, and Hermione refused to eat anymore, and she called it slave labor. And then the other schools sent delegations and shortlisted candidates in October, not the beginning of the school year. And of course, throughout the Goblet of Fire, there's a lot of Rita Skeeter, her articles, and she's snooping around and getting all this inside information somehow. Which was not, she was briefly mentioned in the movies, but not really. And then Hermione created the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare, which is called SPEW. And of course, Harry and Ron feel obligated to pay the $2 sickle club fee, and there's that whole thing throughout. And I wish they would have included Hogwarts classes, such as Moody practicing the Imperial Curse on them and helping them, fight it. And there's Hagrid with the Magical Creatures classes, where that would have been nice. And there was the weighing of the wand ceremony. And one thing I didn't like is that the Bo Adams students, they're Vila. And I know it's kind of hard to show that in the movie, but in the beginning, the Vila performed at the Quidditch World Cup, and then they came, and that was never really addressed. And there was more of the fight between Harry and Ron, and Hermione trying to fix it. And Charlie Weasley was in helping take care of the dragons, which wasn't in the books, or in the movie. And there was more of Sirius and the fighter talking, and he knew about the break-in at Moody's house, and was suspicious of everything. And Hermione wasn't in the tent by Harry before the first task, like in the movie. It was only Ron, Hermione, and Harry when Ron and Harry decided to talk things out and make up, pretty much. And Dobby went at Hogwarts along with Winky in the kitchen, which wasn't in the movies. And Harry knew ahead of time that he needed a dance partner to open up the Yule Ball. And Neville had asked Hermione to go to the ball with him, but she already had a date, which I thought was cute. And Hermione didn't have a grand entrance into the ball, but I really liked how it was done in the movie. It gave him a moment to shine. And Quincy was at the Yule Ball in Mr. Crouch's spot. And there's just more of the Yule Ball in the book, which I always say that. The ball scenes, I wish there were more. And the night that Harry figured out his igloo, he was under his cloak and he got stuck in the stair. And his egg dropped. And on the map, he saw Barty Crouch in the middle of the night. And he was breaking into Snape's office and looking around the castle even though he was missing mysteriously. And then Moody shows up and sees him with his eye, and he gets him safe from Filch and Snape. And then for the morning of the second task, Dobby's the one who woke up Harry and gave him the gillyweed, not Neville. And he told him that his Wheezy is what he had to retrieve, which I thought was so cute, his Weasley. And Quincy, let's see, I mentioned that he was the judge of the second task. But another thing I found interesting is that Harry corresponded with Sirius more, and the trio met Sirius on a Hogsmeade visit once on the edge of town, and they brought him some chicken drumsticks and buttered beer, and they had a talk about everything. And later on, Harry and Crumb even talked about Hermione, and then they saw Barty Crouch acting really weird and crazy, like he was sane sometimes and crazy some moments, and he had to warn Dumbledore. And while Harry went to get Dumbledore, someone had stunned Crumb. And Bagman, when he went into the pensive, I always say that wrong. Bagman was in the chair getting questioned about passing info in the Death Eater supporters in Dumbledore's memory. And one thing that was interesting is that Dumbledore has corresponded with Sirius since his escape with Buckbeak. And Bill and Mrs. Weasley came to watch the third task. And before I forget, Harry had been practicing curses and hexes on willing participants and not so willing, Ron and Hermione, which I thought was cool that they were helping him get ready and prepared. And the whole Barty Crouch situation was explained more. Things happened differently in the book, which I could sit and break upon everything, but basically things were different. And Sirius was with Dumbledore when Harry told him what happened. And then Sirius with Mrs. Weasley, Bill, Ron, and Hermione were with Harry in the hospital wing while he recovered. And Fudge and Dumbledore get into it, whether or not Voldemort has returned, and Dumbledore advises him to have someone else gun Azkaban because Dementors could be easily swayed by Voldemort. And he urges Fudge to make contact with the Giants. And then Fudge doesn't want to believe him and wants to talk to Dumbledore about how to run his school. And that's all foreshadowing for the next book. Or later on, And Bill leaves to talk to Arthur Weasley and update him on everything and help get the ministries, any of the ones that believe, help them get to the support. And Dumbledore wants to talk to Hagrid and Madame Maxine, also foreshadowing. And Dumbledore thinks Dobby will watch over a distressed Winky, which I think is adorable. Because Winky, she was upset because that was a whole nother thing too, is Barty Crouch Sr. There was never a body shown in the book. In the book, his son had killed him and then put an invisibility cloak over him, even though they did tell him when they could find the body. And Winky's all just distressed over everything that had to do with that. And then Dumbledore sends Sirius to Lupin and others to get their help. Dumbledore tells Severus Snape he knows what he has to do. And then Molly, just lovingly, like the mother that Harry never had, comforts Harry and gets him to drink his potion and go to sleep. And the next day, Harry talked with Cedric's parents. And yes, they never mention or show his mom, but his mom is in there. And then he offered them the 1,000 gallons winnings from the cup, but they refused. And Molly went to Dumbledore and asked if he could go straight home with them, and Dumbledore said that no, he had to go to the Dursleys. And then the trio went to talk with Hagrid, and they found out he has a secret job to do with Madame Maxine over the summon. And I love how Hermione figured out, I can't talk today, that Rita Skeeter was an unregistered animagus, and she was a beetle, and she was basically being in the school grounds when she wasn't supposed to be. So Hermione, being like she is, kind of blackmailed her and then told her she could not write use of the quill for the year, or Hermione would expose her. And he then gave his winnings to Fred and George from the joke shop and told them to buy Ron new dress robes, which I thought was cool. And then in the movie, I love how the movie brought the whole Quidditch World Cup and the tournament Triwizard Cup to life. It's much easier to see it and visualize it better as I'm reading through over and over again. And I really like the Bob Adams and Durstring entrance. And I love the Yule Ball, of course. And I loved the duel with Voldemort. Even though in the book, both the Jonathan's also showed up in the Pride Incantatum, but in the movie she wasn't there. I still really adore both of these. I could not pick a favorite Harry Potter series or anything, but I can definitely say I feel like this is a book where a lot of stuff gets left out from the movie. Alright, so hopefully I'll have the Order of the Phoenix ready for you next month. We'll see. It's been a bit crazy lately. Thanks for watching and have a great day.